I'm Lana, 28, and I was about to discover that my future in-laws had been discussing my murder over the appetizers. Of course, I didn't know that yet. All I knew was that I was sitting at the most expensive table in Manhattan's finest restaurant, watching my fiancé's family treat me like I was completely invisible. Marcus had insisted we meet his family the night before our wedding. It's tradition, he'd said, booking a private dining room at Lernaudon that probably cost more than most people's rent. What he hadn't mentioned was that despite every single one of them speaking perfect English, they'd spent the entire evening chattering away in Mandarin as if I were a piece of furniture. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like a complete outsider at your own celebration. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. The Sun family had the kind of old money that whispered instead of shouted, but their treatment of me was loud and clear. Marcus's mother, Helen, wore diamonds that could probably fund a small country. His sister, Jessica, kept checking her phone every time I tried to speak, and his father, Richard, barely acknowledged my existence beyond a polite handshake when we'd arrived. "This wine is exceptional," I said during a lull in their conversation, hoping to contribute something to the evening. Helen smiled that perfectly practiced smile wealthy women master in finishing school. "Yes, dear, Marcus has excellent taste." Then she immediately launched into another rapid-fire conversation in Mandarin with Jessica, both of them glancing at me occasionally and laughing at what were clearly inside jokes. Marcus joined in enthusiastically, his face more animated than I'd seen it in months. Now, I'm not a suspicious person by nature, but when your fiancé's entire family acts like you're not there on the night before your wedding, it tends to make you a little paranoid, especially when they keep looking at you while speaking a language you don't understand. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was marrying into a family that had already decided I didn't belong at their table. But hey, at least the champagne was good, right? "I need to use the restroom," I announced, placing my napkin beside my barely touched plate. Marcus glanced up from his animated discussion with his father. "Of course, sweetheart, take your time." Such a caring response. Really made me feel like part of the family. As I walked toward the back of the restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner was some kind of test I was failing spectacularly. Little did I know, it wasn't a test at all. It was a celebration. The ladies' room at Lernaudon was fancier than my first apartment. Marble and gold fixtures with the kind of soap that probably cost more per pump than I spent on groceries in a week. I stood in front of the mirror, trying to convince myself that feeling excluded at my own rehearsal dinner was just normal family dynamics, not a red flag the size of Texas. That's when I heard the door open behind me. "Excuse me," a soft voice said. I turned to see one of the servers, a young woman who'd been quietly refilling water glasses at our table all evening. She looked nervous, her hands fidgeting with the small towel she carried. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, assuming she had a question about our service. She glanced at the door, then stepped closer, lowering her voice to barely above a whisper. "I understand Mandarin," she said, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. They weren't just talking about wedding plans. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I understand Mandarin," she said, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "They have plans for you. Bad plans. After tomorrow, after you sign the marriage papers," her voice was shaking now, "you need to leave tonight. Don't go back to that table." I stared at her, my brain struggling to process what she was saying. "I'm sorry, what exactly did you hear?" "They were talking about making it look like an accident," she whispered urgently. "Something about drinks, water, and making sure you can't swim." The detail hit me like a physical blow. I had told Marcus about my fear of water during one of our early dates, confessing that I'd never learned to swim because of a childhood trauma. Why would his family know that? Unless, "You think they want to hurt me?" The question sounded insane even as I asked it. "I think they want to kill you," she bluntly said. "Tomorrow night after the ceremony, they mentioned insurance money and your business." "My business?" The website design company I'd built from nothing was worth considerably more than most people realized. The life insurance policy Marcus had convinced me to increase just last month for our financial security. Listen, the server continued, grabbing my arm gently. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But what if I'm not? What if waiting to find out costs you everything? I looked at this stranger who had nothing to gain by lying to me and everything to lose by speaking up. Her uniform name tag read Amy, and her expression was dead serious. Is there another way out of here? I asked. Relief flooded her face. Follow me. The service elevator felt like it descended into another universe. Amy led me through a maze of kitchen corridors while my mind reeled from what she'd told me. 20 minutes ago, my biggest worry was whether my fiancé's in-laws liked me. Now I was apparently fleeing for my life through the back of a 5-star restaurant. There's a delivery entrance, Amy explained, as we hurried past confused kitchen staff. It opens directly onto the street. Do you have somewhere safe to go? Did I? My apartment lease was in Marcus's name. Most of my friends were his friends. My family lived in Ohio. For someone who thought she had her life figured out, I was remarkably isolated. Funny how that works out, isn't it? I'll figure something out, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Amy stopped at a heavy metal door and marked authorized personnel only. Be very careful who you trust. If what I heard is true, they've been planning this for a while. She pushed open the door and cool night air hit my face. The alley was dimly lit, nothing like the elegant dining room I just fled. Thank you, I said, turning back to her. Just stay alive, she said simply. That's thanks enough. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in a Manhattan alley, wearing a designer dress and questioning everything I thought I knew about my fiancé. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Marcus, where are you? You've been gone for 15 minutes. I stared at the text, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That I just escaped our rehearsal dinner because a server overheard his family planning my murder? That sounded crazy even to me. Got really sick suddenly, I typed back. Had to leave. Food poisoning maybe. Oh no, are you okay? Should I come check on you? No, I typed too quickly, then tried to soften it. Just need to rest. Don't want you getting sick before tomorrow. See you at the ceremony. Okay, feel better. Love you. I stared at those 3 words on my scroll. Love you. Did he mean it? Or was he just really good at this whole psychopath thing? As I walked toward the street, hailing a cab with shaking hands, I realized I was about to find out whether I was paranoid or alive. Given the alternative, I was perfectly fine with being paranoid. The cab ride to my emergency hotel room gave me 20 minutes to think. 20 minutes to decide whether I trusted a stranger's warning or my fiancé's word. 20 minutes to choose between what felt safe and what felt right. I chose to trust my gut, and my gut was screaming that Amy had just saved my life. The 24-hour diner on 8th Avenue wasn't exactly the classiest place to plan a defense against a potential murder plot, but it had Wi-Fi, terrible coffee, and absolutely no one who cared why a woman in a cocktail dress was making frantic phone calls at 2 a.m. I'd spent the last 4 hours researching everything I could find about the Sun family. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Not detailed criminal records. Those aren't exactly available on Google. But enough newspaper mentions and social media posts to paint a disturbing picture. Marcus's uncle, Richard, had been married 3 times. All 3 wives had died in tragic accidents within 2 years of marriage. His cousin David had lost 2 fiancées to mishaps. Always women with substantial assets. Always ruled accidental. But I needed real help, not internet research. At 6 a.m., I called my college roommate's sister, Sarah, who'd become a criminal defense attorney in Philadelphia. Sarah, it's Lana. I know it's early, but I think someone is trying to kill me. To her credit, she didn't hang up. She listened as I explained everything. The dinner, Amy's warning, the family's suspicious history. You're absolutely right to be concerned, she said finally. This pattern you're describing could be evidence of a larger scheme, but suspicion isn't proof. You need concrete evidence. What kind of evidence? Recordings would be ideal. Documentation of intent, something that shows premeditation. I thought about Amy's terrified face, about the conversation she'd overheard. What if I could record them talking about it again? That could work. But Lana, if these people are as dangerous as you think, getting that recording could put you in even more danger. I'm getting married in 6 hours. If I don't do something now, there might not be a later to worry about. Sarah was silent for a moment. Where's the wedding? The plaza. They've booked the ballroom and bridal suites. Okay. If you're determined to do this, you need to understand New York's recording laws. You're in a one-party consent state, which means you can legally record conversations you're part of, but you need to be smart about it. She walked me through the technical requirements while I downloaded a recording app to my phone. By the time we hung up, I had a plan. It wasn't a great plan, but it was better than walking blindly into what might be my own murder. I had 5 hours until the ceremony. 5 hours to gather evidence that could save my life or prove I was completely paranoid. Either way, I was about to find out what the Sun family really thought of their newest member. The Plaza Hotel was already bustling with wedding preparations when I arrived at 10 that morning, looking like every other excited bride-to-be. Instead of someone planning to record evidence of their own murder. Nothing suspicious about that at all. I'd spent the early morning hours learning everything I could about smartphone recording and New York law. The recording app was hidden 3 screens deep in my phone, accessible with the simple swipe pattern I'd practiced until it was muscle memory. The bridal suite was exactly what you'd expect from the plaza. Cream silk, crystal accents, and enough mirrors to make a person dizzy. Helen and Jessica had arranged to get ready together, a family tradition they'd mentioned at dinner. How thoughtful of them to include me in their pre-murder bonding time. Lana, darling, Helen's voice was all warmth and fake affection when I entered. We weren't expecting you quite so early. I couldn't sleep, I said, which was entirely true. Thought I'd see if you needed any help with preparations. Jessica looked up from the vanity where she was organizing makeup. How thoughtful. Feeling better this morning? Much better, thank you. I set my purse carefully on a chair near their conversation area, phone already recording. I brought some jewelry options to show you. It was a weak excuse to linger, but Helen took the bait, examining my grandmother's pearl earrings with what looked like genuine interest. Lovely, though perhaps a bit modest for such an important occasion. That's when Jessica said something in Mandarin that made Helen laugh, a sound that made my skin crawl, even though I couldn't understand the words. Yet they continued their conversation in Chinese while I pretended to organize accessories, my heart pounding as my phone captured every word. I caught Marcus's name several times, along with what sounded like numbers and time references. The conversation went on for nearly 10 minutes, before they switched back to English, discussing flower arrangements and photography schedules like 2 women planning a celebration instead of a murder. The reception timeline is perfect. Everything should go smoothly, Helen said, adjusting her necklace in the mirror. Jessica nodded, applying lipstick with steady hands. Marcus seemed so happy. This is exactly what the family needed. What the family needed. Not what Marcus wanted, not what would make us happy as a couple, what the family needed. I continued recording for another 20 minutes, capturing their casual discussion of wedding logistics mixed with occasional bursts of Mandarin that made them both smile in ways that didn't reach their eyes. When I finally excused myself to check on the flowers, I had nearly 30 minutes of audio that might either save my life or prove I was completely paranoid. Now I just needed to find out what they'd actually said. The Apple store in Midtown was my salvation. The tech support representative took one look at my desperate expression and immediately offered to help with urgent translation needs. God bless customer service. I found a quiet corner and opened the translation app he'd recommended, my hands shaking as I played back the recording. The software converted the Mandarin to English text, and with each translated line, my worst fears were confirmed. The naive girl has no idea what's coming tonight. Marcus chose well. She trusts everything he says. After she signs the marriage certificate, we wait exactly 1 hour before serving the special cocktail. The drug will make her confused and unsteady, perfect for an accident near the pool. Make sure the family stays inside during the incident. Too many witnesses could complicate things. Marcus should wait at least 10 minutes before calling for help, long enough to ensure the outcome we need. $2 million in life insurance plus her business assets. Finally, Marcus proves himself worthy of the family legacy. I stared at the translated text until the words blurred. Every detail of my murder planned out like a dinner party. The timing, the method, the cover-up, even the reason. Marcus needed to prove himself to his family by successfully killing his wife. My phone buzzed with a text from the man who was planning to drug and drown me in 3 hours. Can't wait to see you in your dress. Love you so much. I screenshotted the translation, saved the original recording to 3 different cloud accounts, and sent everything to Sarah. Then I called the NYPD number she'd given me for Detective Rivera. Detective Rivera, this is Lana Chen. I have recorded evidence of a planned murder, and I'm supposed to be the victim in about 2 hours. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a police station playing my recording to 2 detectives and an assistant district attorney. Apparently, when you have audio evidence of a murder plot, people take you very seriously. This is enough for arrests, Detective Rivera said after hearing the translated conversation. But we need to coordinate carefully. If we move too early, we might not catch everyone involved. If we wait too long, I become a murder victim. Exactly. So here's what we're going to do. The plan was simple but terrifying. I would go through with the ceremony with undercover officers positioned throughout the venue. The moment anyone tried to serve me a special cocktail or guide me toward the pool area, they'd move in. We'll have surveillance on the entire family, Detective Rivera explained. If this is part of a larger pattern, we want to gather evidence on all their activities. As I signed statement after statement, I marveled at how much my life had changed in 12 hours. Yesterday, I was worried about seating arrangements and centerpieces.
Today, I was helping plan a sting operation at my own wedding. But at least now, I knew I wasn't paranoid. I was just engaged to a family of killers. Getting into my wedding dress, knowing that my groom was planning to murder me, was definitely not something covered in any bridal magazine I'd ever read. But there I was, standing in the plaza's bridal suite bathroom, applying makeup while wearing a wire and trying to look like a happy bride instead of someone coordinating with law enforcement. Detective Lisa Chen, chosen specifically because her last name wouldn't raise suspicion, was posing as my maid of honor. 2 more officers were disguised as hotel staff. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let the family proceed with their plot until they made an overt move, then arrest everyone involved. "How are you holding up?" Detective Chen asked as she helped me with my veil. "Honestly, I'm terrified," I admitted, but also kind of angry. They really thought I was that stupid? A knock on the door interrupted us. "Lana," Marcus's voice called, "can I see you for just a minute before the ceremony?" I opened the door to find my fiancé looking genuinely nervous and excited. For a split second, seeing his familiar face, I almost wondered if I'd gotten everything wrong. This was the man who brought me coffee in bed and remembered how I liked my eggs. Then I remembered the recording. Marcus chose well. She trusts everything he says. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said, his smile seeming completely genuine. "I just wanted to tell you how excited I am about starting our life together." "Me too," I lied smoothly. "I can't wait to be part of your family." His eyes lit up at that. "They're going to love having you as a daughter. Really love it." I bet they are, I thought, especially the part where I die and leave them $2 million. He kissed my forehead gently. "See you at the altar, Mrs. Sun." As he walked away, I marveled at his performance. If I hadn't heard that recording, I would have believed every word. Either he was an exceptional actor or a psychopath, possibly both. The ceremony itself was surreal. 200 guests, a string of quartet, flowers that cost more than most people's cars. Helen and Richard beamed from the front row, looking like the picture of respectability, instead of people who'd spent the morning discussing my murder. I said my vows, knowing they were lies. Marcus said his, and I wondered if he felt anything at all, or if I was just another business transaction. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Marcus lifted my veil with the same hands that would try to push me into a pool within hours. I kissed my would-be murderer and smiled for the photographer, while police officers disguised as caterers watched from the corners of the room. The reception was even more elaborate. A full orchestra, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than I made in a week, and a beautiful pool terrace that would have been the last thing I ever saw. I danced with Marcus, made small talk with his relatives, and waited for someone to offer me that special drink while wearing a wire and surrounded by undercover cops. At 9:23, exactly 1 hour after I signed the marriage certificate, Jessica approached with the crystal champagne flute. "For the bride," she said, her smile bright and warm. "A family toast, very special recipe." That's when Detective Rivera gave the signal. "Police, everyone down." The Plaza Ballroom erupted into absolute chaos. Guests screamed and dove under tables as officers emerged from every corner of the room. The orchestra stopped in the middle of a song. Crystal glasses shattered against the marble floor. Jessica dropped the champagne flute, the one containing God knows what kind of drug, and tried to run. She made it maybe 3 steps before Detective Chen tackled her in a move that was probably not standard police procedure, but extremely satisfying to watch. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to leave bruises. "Lana, what the hell is happening?" I yanked away from him, stepping back toward Detective Rivera. "I know about the plan, Marcus. All of it." The mask slipped from his face so completely it was almost comical. The loving groom expression disappeared, replaced by cold calculation and something that might have been respect. "You're smarter than we thought," he said quietly, his voice dropping to a whisper meant for me only. "Apparently not smart enough," I replied, "considering you thought I'd be dumb enough to drink poison at my own wedding reception." Helen was shouting in rapid Mandarin at the officers trying to handcuff her, her composed elegance completely shattered. Richard was demanding his lawyer in increasingly frantic tones. But it was Marcus's uncle, David, whose reaction told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't surprised or confused. He was calculating, looking for exits. "David's son," Detective Rivera announced, approaching with handcuffs. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and suspicion of murder in the deaths of Margaret Chen, Lisa Park, and Jennifer Wong." The list went on. 3 wives, 2 fiancés, and a business partner who'd asked too many questions about irregularities in the family's investment accounts. The Sun family had been running this marriage murder scheme for over 15 years. "You have the right to stay silent," Detective Rivera continued. But David wasn't listening. He was staring at me with something that might have been admiration. "Impressive," he said as they cuffed him. "Marcus said you were different, but we didn't realize how different." Marcus was being read his rights by Detective Chen, still in her bridesmaid dress and looking no nonsense about the whole thing. "Lana, this is insane," he called out as they led him away. "I never wanted to hurt you. They made me do it." "Sure they did. Just like they made you research my insurance policies and tell me I couldn't swim." The look on his face confirmed what I already knew. Marcus hadn't been coerced into anything. He'd been an eager participant, finally ready to prove himself worthy of the family business by successfully murdering his wife. As the ballroom cleared and crime scene photographers documented what should have been our reception, I stood in my wedding dress watching my husband of 3 hours being loaded into a police van. Detective Rivera approached, looking exhausted but satisfied. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected," I said honestly. "Though I have to ask, what happens to all this?" I gestured at the elaborate reception setup. "The hotel will handle cleanup. As for the marriage, Well, that's going to be annulled pretty quickly under the circumstances. I nodded, looking around at the wreckage of what should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it had been the day I learned to trust my instincts and saved my own life. There's something else, Detective Rivera said. We're going to need your help with the investigation. This family has been operating for years, and there are likely other victims we don't know about yet. I thought about the women who hadn't been lucky enough to have an Amy watching out for them. Whatever you need.
They had a whole system, Agent Kim continued. Background checks on potential targets, forged documents, even relationships with insurance investigators who ensured claims were processed quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed a clear pattern of insurance payouts following accidental deaths. Email communications revealed coordination between family members, and phone records placed various sons at the scenes of multiple suspicious deaths. But the most damning evidence was the recording I'd made, combined with the attempted drugging at the reception. When they tested the champagne Jessica had tried to serve me, they found enough sedatives to render someone unconscious for hours, more than enough time to stage a drowning accident. Marcus is cooperating now, Agent Kim told me during one of our sessions. He's providing details about the other cases in exchange for a reduced sentence. How reduced? I asked. Life without parole instead of the death penalty. I suppose that counted as progress. The investigation revealed that the family had stolen over $15 million through their scheme, not counting additional assets inherited from their victims, properties, businesses, investments. They'd built their entire fortune on the graves of women who'd made the mistake of trusting them. 3 months after my almost wedding, I testified before a federal grand jury. Sitting in that sterile room, describing how I discovered my husband's plan to murder me, felt surreal. But it was also empowering. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had control again. Mrs. Chen, the prosecutor said, I'd kept my maiden name for legal purposes. In your opinion, was the defendant's expression of love and commitment genuine? I thought about Marcus's face when the police arrived, how quickly his mask had slipped. No, I said clearly. I was never his wife. I was his mark. The grand jury indicted the entire family: Marcus, Helen, Jessica, Richard, David, and 6 other relatives and associates. The trial would take months, but the outcome was already clear. None of them would see the outside of a federal prison for a very long time. As I left the courthouse that day, I realized something inside me had changed. The woman who'd sat at that dinner table 4 months earlier, desperately trying to win over people planning her death, was gone. In her place was someone who'd learned the value of trusting her instincts and the importance of surrounding herself with people who genuinely cared. People like Amy, who'd risked her job to save a stranger's life. It was time to find her and say thank you properly. Amy was exactly where I expected, working the evening shift at Leonard, moving through the dining room with the same quiet efficiency I remembered from that night 4 months ago. When she saw me approaching, her face lit up with relief and genuine joy. "You're alive," she said, stating the obvious with such happiness that I almost started crying right there in the middle of the restaurant. "Thanks to you," I said. "Can you take a break? I'd like to talk." We sat in the same staff break room where she'd first warned me about the conversation she'd overheard. The police had interviewed her extensively during the investigation, and she'd testified at the grand jury hearing. Her testimony about the family's dinner conversation had been crucial evidence. "I've been following the news," she said. 15 years of this? How many women did they kill?" "At least 12 that we know of.
Probably more. I leaned forward. Amy, I came here because I want to offer you something. She looked puzzled. Offer me what? I run a web design company. Small, but growing fast. I need someone to handle client relations. Someone with excellent judgment about people. Someone who knows how to read situations. Someone brave enough to speak up when something isn't right. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know anything about web design. I don't need you to know about web design. I need you to know about people. You saved my life because you trusted your instincts and had the courage to act on them. Those are exactly the qualities I need in a business partner. Business partner? I'm serious. 20% equity, full benefits, and a salary triple what you're making here. What do you say? Amy's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do this for me? Because you did something for me that you didn't have to do. You got involved when it would have been easier to mind your own business. You risked your job, your safety, maybe even your life to warn someone you didn't even know. I paused. The world needs more people like you, in positions where they can make a difference. She wiped her eyes and smiled. When do I start? Tomorrow if you want. I already have business cards printed. I handed her a small white card with elegant black lettering. Amy Chen, Director of Client Relations, Chen Digital Solutions. She stared at the card, then at me. You really thought this through. I've had 4 months to think about what I wanted to do next with my life. Hiring you was the first thing on my list. 6 months later, Amy was running the client side of my business with an efficiency that amazed everyone. She had an uncanny ability to read people, to sense when clients were being honest about their needs or trying to hide problems that would affect their projects. It's the same skill I used at the restaurant, she explained when I complimented her intuition. You learn to anticipate what people need before they ask for it. But more than her professional skills, Amy brought something to the business I hadn't realized was missing: genuine human connection. She remembered clients' children's names, asked about their hobbies, and built relationships founded on trust and mutual respect. Our client retention rate rose from 70% to 95% within 6 months of her joining. Word-of-mouth referrals increased by 200%. We were doing better work for better people, and both Amy and I went home every day feeling like we'd accomplished something meaningful. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't warned me? I asked one evening as we were closing the office. She considered the question seriously. I think about it every day. Not just what would have happened to you, but to the next woman, and the one after that. She was right. By speaking up, Amy hadn't just saved my life, she'd helped stop a criminal enterprise that had been destroying families for 15 years. Thank you, I said quietly, for all of it. Thank you for listening, and for giving me the chance to do something that matters. The newspaper article came out exactly 1 year after what the media had dubbed the Plaza Hotel murder plot. I was quoted extensively, along with FBI agent Kim and Detective Rivera, who'd been promoted partly for his work on our case. The Sun family marriage murder scheme resulted in 23 arrests and the recovery of over $15 million in fraudulent insurance claims, I read aloud to Amy, over coffee, in our expanded office. Federal investigators believe at least 12 women were killed over a 15-year period, with the actual number likely higher. Amy looked up from her laptop, where she was reviewing contracts for our newest client, a chain of boutique hotels wanting a complete website overhaul. 23 people. Can you imagine how many more women would have died if you hadn't figured it out? I couldn't imagine it. The life I'd been living a year ago trusting, naive, isolated, felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. The woman who had once sat at that dinner table, desperately trying to fit in with people planning her death, was afraid of confrontation, afraid of being alone, afraid of trusting her instincts.
The woman I was now ran a successful business, built genuine friendships based on mutual respect, and never ignored her gut feelings about people or situations. You know what the strangest part is? I said to Amy. I'm happier now than I was before any of this happened. Amy smiled. That's not strange. That's what recovery looks like. She was right. I had spent most of my 20s trying to make myself smaller, more acceptable, more palatable to people who didn't deserve my effort. I dated men who took more than they gave, maintained friendships that drained my energy, and prioritized other people's comfort over my own safety. Now, I had boundaries that people respected because I enforced them. I had a business that thrived because I made decisions based on logic and instinct, not fear or people-pleasing. And I had a friendship with Amy that worked because we both understood the value of honest communication. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Marcus' son denied parole in federal murder conspiracy case. I showed the message to Amy, who nodded approvingly. Good. How long is he serving again? Life without parole. His mother got 25 years. Jessica got 15 with her cooperation testimony. I deleted the alert without reading the full article. I don't really follow it anymore, I said. That chapter of my life is closed. Good for you, Amy replied. Then she tilted her head. Though, I have to ask, any regrets about the whole situation? I thought seriously about her question. Did I regret falling for Marcus's lies, almost becoming another victim in their family's twisted scheme? You know what I regret? I said finally. I regret that it took almost getting murdered for me to learn to trust my instincts. I regret spending so many years seeking approval from people who didn't deserve it. But do I regret the experience itself? I paused. No, because it led me here, to this business, to our friendship, to the life I have now. Amy raised her coffee cup in a mock toast to terrible experiences that lead to better outcomes. To people who speak up when they see something wrong, I countered. We clinked mugs, two women who had met in the worst possible circumstances and built something good from it. There's something else, Amy said, closing her laptop and giving me her full attention. Remember that conference I went to last month, the one about women in business? I nodded. Amy had recently started speaking at conferences about trusting your instincts in professional settings, using our story as an example of why it's so important to listen to warning signals. They want me to do a keynote speech at their national convention, she said, her eyes shining. 3,000 attendees, and they're offering a consulting contract for their member businesses. I stared at her. Amy, that's incredible. Do you realize what kind of exposure that means for the company? I was hoping you'd say that, she grinned, because I already said yes. 2 years later, I stood in a conference room overlooking Central Park, watching Amy present our latest project to a room full of executives. She moved through the presentation with confidence and authority, fielding questions with ease and demonstrating the kind of professional presence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. Any other questions about the implementation timeline? Amy asked, scanning the room with that same sharp attention she once used to read restaurant customers. A hand went up. What kind of support can we expect during the transition phase? Excellent question, Amy replied smoothly. We'll have a dedicated team member assigned to your account throughout the entire process, with weekly check-ins and 24/7 technical support for the first 6 months.
I watched from the back of the room, marveling at how far we both had come. The woman who had once been refilling water glasses 3 years ago was now running client relations for a company that employed 15 people and worked with Fortune 500 clients. After the presentation, as the executives filed out discussing next steps in contracts, Amy joined me by the windows. "That went well," I said. "Better than well," she replied with a grin. "I think we just landed our biggest client yet." She looked out at the city below. "Do you ever think about that night, about how different everything could have been?" "All the time," I admitted, but not in a what-if way anymore, more in a thank God way. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching people move through the streets below. Somewhere out there, in offices and restaurants and homes across the city, people were making split-second decisions, whether to get involved, whether to speak up, whether to trust their instincts about the people around them. "You know what I realized?" Amy said softly. "That night at the restaurant, I wasn't just saving your life. I was saving my own, too. I was saving myself from becoming the kind of person who sees something wrong and doesn't act." She was right. By choosing to warn me, Amy had chosen to be the kind of person she wanted to be. Someone who cared enough about strangers to take a risk for their safety. "I have something for you," I said, pulling a small velvet box from my purse. Amy looked puzzled as she opened it to reveal a simple gold necklace with a small pendant engraved with 2 words, "Trust instincts." "It's beautiful," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "But what's the occasion?" "The occasion is that 3 years ago you trusted your instincts and changed both of our lives completely. I wanted you to have something to remind you that your judgment is worth acting on." As Amy fastened the necklace, I thought about the different ways people define success. For a long time, I'd believed success meant impressing people who were planning to kill me. I thought it meant fitting into spaces where I wasn't welcome, earning approval from people who didn't value me. Now, I knew better. Success meant building something meaningful with people who deserved my time and energy. It meant trusting my instincts, creating genuine relationships, and using whatever influence I had to make the world a little safer for others. My phone buzzed again, a notification about a business award our company had just received. I glanced at it briefly, then put the phone away. The recognition was nice, but it wasn't what mattered most anymore. What mattered was walking into work each day knowing that Amy and I had built something good together. What mattered were the clients who trusted us with their businesses because they knew we would do right by them. What mattered were the young women who heard Amy speak at conferences and learned to trust their own instincts in dangerous situations. "Ready to go celebrate that new contract?" Amy asked, adjusting her necklace. "Absolutely. But first, I want to say something." I turned to face her directly. "Thank you. Not just for that night at the restaurant, but for everything since then. For building this company with me. For being the kind of friend I didn't know I needed. For showing me what it looks like when someone chooses courage over convenience." Amy smiled. The same warm expression I'd seen in that restaurant bathroom 3 years ago, when she decided to risk everything to warn a stranger. "Thank you for listening," she said, "and for proving that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing." As we left the conference room together, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The marriage that was actually a murder plot taught me that my instincts were worth trusting. The stranger who'd warned me became my closest friend and business partner. The life I thought I wanted had been replaced by something infinitely better.
If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about people who turn their darkest moments into their greatest triumphs. Remember, sometimes the people who try to destroy us give us exactly the motivation we need to build something better than what they tried to take away. Trust your instincts. Listen to those who care about your safety, even if they're strangers. And never be afraid to walk away from situations that don't feel right, even when you can't explain why. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do is believe someone who has nothing to gain by lying to you and everything to lose by speaking up. Amy was that person for me. And because she chose courage over convenience, we both got to write a completely different ending to our stories than the one other people had planned for us.